Now, the US and Iran will hold fresh peace talks tomorrow. That's according to Donald Trump, after the two sides appear to step back from a wave of attacks which has threatened to derail peace efforts. Posting on his social media platform, the US president wrote, all in capitals, Iran has requested a meeting. It will take place tomorrow in Doha. His comments follow a series of escalating reciprocal strikes over the weekend, sparked by efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. I'm now joined by the American-Iranian journalist and host of the Iran podcast, Nigar Mortazavi. Nigar, a very warm welcome to you. Have Iran confirmed these talks yet? There was some question, wasn't there, about whether they were going to take place or not?
Thanks for having me, Kate. Yes, I mean, we've seen this movie before. First of all, it's Monday, so the open of the market, and any conflict in the Strait of Hormuz we know does impact the market, which very much is important for President Trump, so this is not a coincidence. And we're still waiting to see if these talks are going to happen. It's definitely a departure from what was supposed to happen in Switzerland. The continuation of those talks, and it's because of essentially the conflict flaring up to some extent, and what the Iranians at least see as a violation of the memorandum of understanding, not just in the Strait of Hormuz, but also in Lebanon. So I think both sides are serious about continuing to pursue diplomacy, but each is trying to push the limits and impose their own interpretation of what is in that memorandum of understanding, which is actually a short document, but includes a lot of complicated issues.
What is the situation now with the Strait of Hormuz?
So the Iranians agreed to open the Strait of Hormuz for the duration of the talks that would lead to a final agreement, but under conditions. They want to be able to manage it with coordination, meaning ships can pass, but they need to coordinate the route with Iran. Iran needs to know who the ship is, what they're carrying, etc. Their argument is that this is technically still an extension of wartime. It's not full peacetime yet. U.S. forces have not left the vicinity of Iran. I mean, they just attacked Iran again. And so from their viewpoint, they have this argument, this legal argument, which has some standing, that there needs to be innocent passage, which means they have to coordinate to make sure they know who the ships are, if there's any security or safety issues for them. And also there's a political message. Basically, the Iranians are trying to say that the Strait of Hormuz and the traffic is not going to go back to the pre-war era, essentially that status quo, to pretend like nothing happened. From their viewpoint, two wars happened last year and this year, US and Israel. And so they want to be able to continue to have their leverage over the Strait of Hormuz, but in a different way. They constantly emphasize that they want to do it in accordance with international law. They want to do it in collaboration with Oman, because this is territorial waters of the two countries overlapping, and they also want to bring in some other regional, some of their neighbors. So the details of what they want to do is still being discussed. Even inside Iran, there's a debate, but they definitely want to send a political message that it's not going to go back to how it was before the war.
These talks in Doha tomorrow are technical talks. The focus, as I'm sure you've been gathering, will be on the Strait of Hormuz, just for our listeners there to get a handle on this. President Macron of France said he's working with Oman to de-escalate tensions in the Middle East. He's going to cooperate with partners to demine the strait. There are some commentators saying that actually Iran is competing with Oman as decision maker, that Iran doesn't like the presence of Oman in these talks, or indeed other world leaders like Macron talking to Oman.
I mean, this is a gray area. At the end of the day, Hormuz doesn't just belong to Iran. This is, like I said, it's a very narrow waterway, and it's a very special waterway. I've seen comparisons to other waterways around the world. This is not the open sea. This is not international water open for everyone. So the Iranians do have a legal claim when it comes to how they see the management, but it's overlapping territorial waters of the two countries. So there is no way Iran can just have a grip over the Strait of Hormuz without Oman in the long term. So that's why they have been trying. They've done a lot of shuttle diplomacy. They're trying to cooperate with Oman. And the Omanis, I think, I don't want to say they're caught in between, but for them it's difficult to manage the relationship. They're not a party to this war. They're a neutral party. In fact, they're a mediator. They have been a mediator between Tehran and Washington, and now they're caught between these two parties. One of them is a strong ally, the US, and the other one is a strong neighbor who's always been there and will continue to be there. So for them moving forward, managing these two relationships is going to be complicated, but I think Oman is interested in managing it, not really flaring up a conflict or a major disagreement with either side. And the Iranians are also signaling that they want to do it definitely with Oman as a collaboration, and they call it a regional framework, potentially even bringing on some other neighbors, at least the ones that are more friendly, like Qatar, etc.
Look, thanks for being with us, Nigel Mortazavi, who is an American-Iranian journalist, host of the Iran podcast. Good to have you along.
Well, the fragile peace between America and Iran has been rocking again over the weekend. On Truth Social, Donald Trump is announcing fresh negotiations will take place in Qatar tomorrow. And Aaron David Miller, the former US Middle East negotiator, joins us. Welcome back to the show, Aaron.
Thanks for having me, John.
Aaron, welcome. Well, give us your latest reflections on the Hormuz Strait after yet another agreement to cease hostilities, after yet another bout of Iran firing on shipping in America, firing on Iranian shore targets. Is stability and steady traffic on the Strait just a futile hope?
You know, none of this should come as a surprise, John. A flawed, some would argue largely failed U.S.-Israeli military campaign has led to a flawed memorandum of understanding, which has led to a flawed process of implementation. And I'm reminded of what the Taliban said during the Afghan enterprise: you may have the clock, but we have the time. And the reality is the Iranians are determined to use two issues, which the MOU has, frankly, we had very bad lawyers and negotiators in comparison to the Iranians, given them all kinds of loopholes. Number one is Lebanon, which will be a perennial pain, which a gift that is going to keep on giving. And the second, as you pointed out, is the kinetic issue of the Straits. If the Iranians detect any sense that the Trump administration, in conjunction with the Gulf states, are somehow trying to erode what they consider to be the new reality, they're going to push back, and they're going to push back hard. And that's exactly what you've seen. They are not going to give up. And whether the horses left the barn, the ship is sailed, the genie's out of the bottle, I don't know what cliche you want to use. We are not going back to February 27 with respect to the Straits of Hormuz.
Yeah, and the evidence supports what you're saying. So sanctions on Iranian oil, they're being lifted, assets are being unfrozen. Iran is continuing to assert its right to resume control, and we've got to calculate that President Trump won't resume full-scale hostilities this side of the midterm election. So how would you advise the White House, Aaron, to bring about a better outcome?
I think there's only one way, and it may be a bridge too far. Technical talks are fine, but what you need are negotiations at the leadership level. And it's not a grand bargain. It's just a self-interested quid pro quo. In return for accepting significant constraints and restraints on your nuclear infrastructure, including diluting the highly enriched uranium, all of it under IAEA strict monitoring and supervision, we will facilitate the transfer of billions of dollars, either through sanctions relief, waivers on oil sales, or unfrozen assets. That is in my judgment, that is the only strategic understanding that would allow the time and space to at least manage the two triggers that will continue to erode the process. Lebanon on one hand and Straits on the other. What you do about the Straits, John, I don't have an answer. J.P. Morgan, in a sort of aspirational study, concluded that the Iranians could make $70 to $80 billion a year by charging $2 million per ship per day. That's 2 million times 130 tankers through 365 days a year. And frankly, the shippers, the insurance companies, given the stakes involved, will pay.
Well, interesting take, Aaron. But aren't those things happening now? We're already seeing Iran free to trade its oil. We're already seeing moves to unfreeze its assets, and all of this at the beginning of the process, not the end.
Right, and of course the Trump administration can reimpose the naval blockade. They can go back to kinetic strikes. The waivers on oil sales are permitted, I think, for it's maybe a 30 to 60 day period. All of that can be drawn back, but it won't answer the mail, John. That's the real problem here. And I come back to the problem. It's not the MOU. It was a badly negotiated text. Nobody's taking it seriously. Well, the Iranians want to use it to demonstrate that they have the right to make best efforts to facilitate, right? I just think what you're watching now reflects, sadly, the realities of the balance of power. A risk-ready Iran, a risk-averse Trump administration that does not want to go back to a complete blockade, complete closure of the straits, and major hostilities.
That seems to be where we are. Aaron David Miller, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.